everybody. Welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning, and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric, checking in from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with AJ in Austin, Texas. How's it going, AJ?
It's going well, man. I'm in the same call booth that we were in the last time we recorded together, and it's a little bit more comfortable without you in here.
Yeah, it's a lot more spacious without two big fellas in there.
Yeah, no kidding, man.
All right, so this is episode 174. We've got some great news and updates, a few changes coming in from United and also from Delta that we're going to get to. Also have a couple of interesting opportunities to earn miles or buy some miles with a couple of different programs. And then for today's core content, we're going to talk about the difference between charge cards and credit cards. Get a couple of questions about this every once in a while. It can certainly be confusing, and there is a difference in terms of how they impact your credit, both opening and closing cards. And also with your eligibility. Amex has some kind of interesting rules around which ones you can have. So we're going to dive into that in the second half of the show. But let's get to the news and updates. All right, so we've got United, and this one I thought was definitely worth talking about because a lot of people this is one of those things that kind of happens behind the scenes with the airlines that can really make your travel day a lot smoother. And United has adopted a somewhat unfriendly decision to drop interline agreements with 5 Middle Eastern airlines. So first of all, let me explain the interline agreement. Basically, this is what allows you to check your bags through to your final destination when you're flying on 2 different airlines. So let's say you're flying from New York to London on a United flight, and then you're continuing onwards from London to Dubai on Emirates. If United has an interline agreement with Emirates, it means that you can actually check your bag through all the way to Dubai, which is super helpful because then you don't have to exit, go through immigration, go outside of security, claim your bag, and then check in again for the second flight. So it can save you a bunch of time and make it possible to have a much shorter layover. But unfortunately, and United, this is super common. So this happens a lot behind the scenes. United has like 150 interline agreements is what I was reading from this post, but they've decided to drop basically the big Middle Eastern carriers. They've dropped Emirates, Fly Dubai, Qatar, Royal Jordanian, and Saudia as of May 5th. So this has already happened. Just could mean that you need to have a longer layover period. And the other thing that impacts travelers less often, but still super important, is this is the agreement that allows airlines to put you on one of their competitors' flights if there's a big problem with irregular operations. I think, about that Delta meltdown that happened, maybe a few weeks back, maybe a month ago, where tons of travelers were stranded. And when airlines decide to drop these interline agreements and say, essentially, we don't need help from the competition. We can handle all our own passengers. And then they get in trouble. It means that it's much more likely that you're going to be stuck for a couple of days instead of just a few hours before they put you on another airline's flight on the way out. So that's something to keep in mind. Most importantly, for just those connections, you're going to need more time if you're connecting from United to one of the Middle East carriers that I mentioned.
And that's interesting. It's fascinating to me how the average passenger, even people that fly a lot, just don't understand. So it's always interesting to hear how the airlines are jockeying and taking these risks, these moves.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got some good news for those Delta SkyMiles members with status. So now there are going to be complimentary upgrades on Aero Mexico. So this is a pretty good gig for those with status. And it's also not overly restrictive. From 1 mile at a time here, I'm showing that flights between the U.S. and Mexico, within Mexico, to Central America, the Caribbean, and Ecuador will all qualify for this upgrade. So unlimited complimentary upgrades. Another thing to note about this is that this is going to happen at the gate. So when you book your ticket, you're not going to know about anything until actually you get to the gate if there is availability. And now, Eric, as far as this goes, there's kind of a pecking order, I'd imagine, however many spots there are, and then there's kind of a rank on those that have status and maybe when they booked a flight. Do you know exactly how the pecking order works?
Yeah, I think generally it's just in order of elite status. I I don't actually know the rules with respect to if you have other people in your party that are lower status traveling with you. Different airlines do this differently, but I think the good news here is that it should be essentially the same as the rules on Delta. So if you're a Delta Elite, you probably know the rules front and back. AJ and I are just miles users with Delta for the most part, so don't have any firsthand experience. But this is definitely nice. In fact, we were talking just the other day about, I don't think either of us have flown Aeromexico, but it seems like they have a pretty nice product, and it's great that some of the slightly longer flights from Mexico are included in this. So if there are seats up in the front of the plane available and you have elite status, you have a pretty good shot of being able to get those if you booked with Delta. All right. Next up, we've got a purchase miles opportunity with Life Miles. And I wanted to just mention this one super fast because this happens all the time. So this one's not especially special compared to other offers that they have with Life Miles in the past. But this is valid for until May 30th. And essentially, you get 100% bonus if you buy 1,000 to 50,000 miles. And then the bonus kind of goes up from there up to 125% bonus. But sort of just for some reference, in February this year, they offered 140% bonus. Last December, they offered 140% bonus. So this is not exactly the top of the line type of bonus, but if you're looking to buy a flight soon and you don't have enough miles, this could be a great way to get discounted business class. So we will link in the show notes. It's got a bunch more details about what the different tiers are and how you can take advantage of buying Life Miles to get into premium cabin at a big discount.
Good stuff, man. Speaking of promotions and transfers and bonuses, there is a deal right now between JetBlue and American Express. So JetBlue is a transfer partner of American Express, but the normal transfer ratio is a little bit less than 1-to-1. So what they've got going on right now is a 25% transfer bonus. So that means now one Amex point will turn into one JetBlue point, which brings the redemption value up to 1.5 cents per point, which is actually pretty good. This is kind of like a niche redemption if you're flying somewhere JetBlue's flying and you don't feel like spending a little bit of money on the flight. And one final thing to note about this, though, is if you do have the JetBlue Plus card, you get a 10% refund on all your points redemptions. So this will bring the redemption up to 1.7 cents per point, which is pretty good considering that JetBlue is going to be typically cheaper than the other carriers. So it's not going to, the mileage requirements here aren't going to be huge. And they fly to some pretty interesting places, all around the U.S. They fly to Colombia. So there's some decent ways that you could potentially put some Amex points to work if you don't want to spend much money on a flight.
Yeah, and another nice thing about the JetBlue is just that it is a price of the ticket based point system, so you're not going to encounter the same kind of award availability problems that you do with the traditional programs. Since pretty much there are no blackout dates, they just increase the number of points required as the price of the ticket goes up. So that's something to keep in mind. Next up, we've got kind of an interesting offer with American Airlines. This is a sort of a combo deal where you can get 10,000 bonus miles if you complete a series of sort of promotions with 4 of their partners. So they've got a deal with 1-800-Flowers, Advantage eShopping, which is the American Airlines shopping portal. There's also the Advantage Dining, and there is a wine, basically a wine club, where if you sign up for your first shipment, you will be able to get 10,000 miles and actually plus an additional 3,000 miles that comes from the wine partner. So this is a total of 13,000 miles up for grabs. There's a really good post from Frequent Miler that explains all the details. I do think this is potentially worth going for if you don't have a huge amount of spend and it's not really easy to acquire miles, or you've sort of maxed out options for credit cards. Obviously, the 60,000 point bonus is still going on with the American Airlines cards from Citibank. So that's an even better, faster, and cheaper way. But this is something that you could probably do within a couple of hours to knock out these items. And, especially if you think you might actually use the 6 bottles of wine that you purchase. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but roughly $150 that you're going to have to spend. And Abroaders is currently at 4.5 cents per point on all of our American redemptions in the last year and a half. So we've redeemed just under 4 million points on 63 award tickets. And so we're getting really big value. So if you were to take, say, 4 cents per point, a little bit worse than we're doing on average, those 10,000 points would be worth $520. So could be worth some time, especially if it's easy for you to knock out the dining option, or you've got something that you already want to buy through the American shopping portal. And again, we'll link to that Frequent Miler post with all the details to help you save some time going through and checking off those different partner deals.
Yeah, man, exactly. It's all about finding that overlap. If you don't like wine, don't do it. But if you're going to be drinking wine anyways, and you got a decent deal, why not take advantage of that? And now this next piece is kind of in the same spirit of that, but at just a huge scale. So what's going on is Chase is offering 100,000 ultimate rewards for those that finance a new home with them between May 8th and August 6th, 2017. So the obvious advice here is don't get a bad deal on a mortgage over the points, but if you are going to be buying a home and you are confident that Chase is going to be the best option, you get 100,000 points here. So obviously there's, mortgages are really complex. And when it's all said and done, we're talking about a lot of money. So this is nothing to mess with unless you're already confident that Chase is going to be, the issuer you want to go with. But yeah, I mean, if you are in the market for a home and you're thinking about getting a mortgage from Chase, then 100,000 points, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I did read that this was actually limited to people that have either the Sapphire Preferred card or the Sapphire Reserve. I'm not 100% if that's true, but I know lots of people have those cards, so it's a great option. And again, if you do have the Reserve card, 100,000 points is worth $1,500 if you just redeem your points for cash back towards travel or just statement credits essentially towards travel booked through Chase. So that's kind of a good minimum value benchmark when you're looking at your interest rate. Obviously, just paying even a few points or a few tenths of a point higher in interest is going to wipe out that value. So you still want to take the best mortgage deal. But like AJ said, if you can get it through Chase, nice to have an extra 100,000 ultimate rewards points to show for it. Okay, so next up, I've got a quick announcement. This is another piece of news for JetBlue and another positive thing. Lots of good news this week. So JetBlue is now offering earning for points when you travel with Iceland Air. Now, this is obviously not a huge airline. They have pretty limited routes, but if you're thinking about going to Iceland, this is nice to have an extra option. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Alaska is also an earning partner. So you can credit Iceland Air flights to Alaska Airlines, and that's almost always going to be a better deal. Number one, they have a little bit more generous earning schedule where you can earn 100% of miles flown on more classes of economy. So the JetBlue is just a little bit devalued compared to the American earning chart, but also just Alaska miles are worth more. So the only reason you'd really want to credit to JetBlue is one, if you fly domestically a lot on JetBlue or you fly places that Alaska Airlines doesn't serve, or two, if you have the JetBlue credit card and get that 10% rebate, that could factor into the decision as well, make it a little bit more valuable. And potentially thirdly, if you have Amex points and know that you can top up your account and credit from Iceland Air to get a nice balance in your JetBlue account. But ultimately, I'd say 85% of people are going to probably still want to credit their flights from Iceland Air to Alaska, but it's always good to have options.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Always good to have options. Now, this next piece is something I want to get your opinion on. So the U.S. State Department issued an alert for European travel this summer. I find these topics tricky because you don't want to just give people just random advice to don't listen to the authorities. It's not dangerous, just do it. But I mean, I don't know. My gut tells me that if I was traveling, even if I had a family, I don't think that this would stop me from traveling to Europe. I mean, Europe's a big place. There's been some bad things that have happened, but there's bad stuff that happens everywhere. And also, I mean, we've talked about these travel advisories in the past, and I mean, it's in the State Department's best interest to, give some fair warning. But often, we've both traveled to a lot of places with advisories, and it's been no big deal. I mean, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I'm curious to know what the threshold is. What sort of credible threats are, come to light that cause the State Department to go out and issue one of these warnings, especially one that's pretty broad, that's talking about Europe as a region. It's not a specific threat to a specific place in Europe.
They cited past events, so stuff that's happened in Russia, stuff that's happened in Sweden, UK, and France. So the things that we already knew happened.
I think, for me, the biggest thing, I'm actually going to be in Europe during the time that this expires. So I'm going to be flying to Ireland with my mom and sister and wife. So, got a plan. I'm not sure exactly where else we're going to go. But, I think the biggest takeaway for me is just, always be vigilant, just kind of pay attention, know what's going on around you. And especially in, places like public transit, subway stations that are jam packed, I always find myself just keeping an eye on, where are the exits? How did I get in? How far underground am I? Those kinds of things. It's just, that's sort of my mentality anyways, is to just kind of keep your head on a swivel, as our football coach used to say, and just kind of pay attention to what's around you. But I certainly wouldn't change travel plans, and I'm very excited to spend some time in Europe at the end of the summer, regardless of having this advisory out from the State Department.
Yeah, man, I'm with you on that. I think the bar is pretty low for the State Department to say something. And once again, like we said, I mean, they look bad if they don't warn people about stuff and something bad happens. So I'd be really curious to look at like data on the last 15 years of travel advisories and see how credible the advisories were. How much more dangerous were those places than when there weren't advisories. I'd imagine that there's actually not a very big difference, especially when they're using trailing data. So something bad happened here, like often the same places don't get hit again. France kind of did, but typically when something bad happens in a city, they buckle down on security, and the bad guys find a new place to pick on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, moving on, and maybe something to help you take the edge off those nerves if you are concerned about flying or concerned about, the threats of terrorist attacks. Delta Amex card members now get free premium drinks at the Sky Club. This is going to be going on for at least a little while. I think, actually, this is ending soon. I didn't realize it's actually through May 14th. So if you are traveling soon, it could be an advantage. It was actually kind of interesting because I was at the Sky Club in Atlanta on my way down to Rio de Janeiro. And it was actually the nicest Sky Club that I've ever been to. It was the Terminal E location at the Atlanta airport, which was just a really big location. So I imagine since Atlanta is the major hub for Delta, that there's probably a huge number of Sky Clubs, and it probably varies a lot depending on which one you go into. But this one had really good food. I highly recommend it. It had really nice views of the tarmac. Not everybody gets excited about that, but I love watching the planes taxi in and roll up to the gate. And at this one, at least, when I, regrettably informed them that I no longer had the Delta Sky Miles card, they're like, oh, well, you're stuck with the well drinks. If you want a gin and tonic, it's going to be Bombay Sapphire. So it's not exactly roughing it at some locations, but I do know that there are lots of Sky Clubs that, just have beer and wine for free and you have to pay for everything else. So if you're traveling with Delta soon, make sure you bring your Delta Sky Miles card so that you can take advantage and get a couple of free drinks.
Yeah, man, that's good for me. I don't mind flying that much, but I do like taking the edge off a little bit, just kind of getting me in a space where I'm just kind of going through the motions. Let me just get there.
Yes.
While we're in this random news section, something I just wanted to touch on really quick that we have not mentioned the past couple weeks is this Bose headphones thing. So there's currently a lawsuit. I believe it's a man from Chicago that claims that Bose was doing some stuff between the Bluetooth connection on his headphones, and Bose was essentially spying on the music he was listening to and all sorts of things. So I thought this was pretty interesting. So people that have Bose headphones where you connect with a Bluetooth to your device, it looks like Bose might have more information than you thought they had. Yeah. Pretty interesting. The points guy gave a little take on it where he's like, I don't really care if they know what music I listen to. Say, don't judge me for taste in music. I kind of agree there, where like it's not necessarily a huge deal on an individual level. If they know that type of stuff, for me, it's not gonna be a huge game changer. But just on principle, I think it's wrong that they weren't more transparent on this. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, because I don't think it's a small lawsuit. I think this guy is he's shooting the moon a little bit on this one. I think he's trying to get some real money from them.
Yeah. I guess I would say, number one, I really like Bose as a company. Up until this, I couldn't think of anything that I have against them. I have, at one point, I got the noise canceling headphones back way before there was any sort of wireless Bluetooth technology. And those were really high quality. They lasted me like 7 or 8 years, still functioning great. And I also have some of the in-ear headphones, again, the wired kind. But this just doesn't seem like the Bose values or the culture that they've built at their company. I've had on multiple occasions after, a year or a year and a half, even outside of warranty, where something has gone wrong. And frankly, just from wear and tear, I beat the hell out of my headphones. And so I love their products because, number one, they are really durable. And despite the fact that I take them through hell, they have replaced them on 2 or 3 different occasions, absolutely free, even paid for the shipping. And at least one of those occasions, it was like well outside of the manufacturer's warranty. And that just saved me the effort of having to go through and file a credit card claim. Usually you get that extended warranty for an extra year beyond the manufacturer's warranty. So it wasn't like I was totally out of luck if Bose didn't honor that, but they just saved me so much time and hassle, and were just super friendly and easy about it. Oh, no worries. If you're 3 months over the year, we'll replace them, just mail in the old ones. So they built a lot of goodwill from me by just great customer service. So I'm disappointed to see this, and that they're potentially selling information gathered without explicitly asking for permission. But I will say they'd have to do a lot worse to ruin that loyalty that they've built up over treating me very well as a customer.
Yeah, man. One thing on this, and it's not to give Bose the hey, it's no big deal, everyone does it, but to create some context and be fair. I mean, this is not this practice. I was watching a video of a venture capitalist giving a lecture to companies on different, if they face hard times, how to find some revenue that they didn't previously think of. And he's like, man, it's like, the elephant in the room, but you can sell your users' data if you're really in a tough spot. And you just put it around the room, your data is being sold right now, your data is being sold right now. That doesn't make it a more savory practice, and it doesn't make me agree with the practice, but they're not alone. That's kind of where we are in the land of freemium, where we can use all these amazing technologies for free. We are the product if we're using something for free in some capacity, depending on the model.
Yeah, it's something that I think, is really in the domain of big companies. Obviously, we as a travel services provider collect a bunch of information about what credit cards people have, what their spending is. And of course, we don't share any of that information, and we never will as long as we control the company. But, that's just something that's out there, and I think is super tempting for big companies that have a lot of financial stuff to gain by offering up user data to third parties to try and make marketing more effective.
Yeah, man, I think it's a good business move for us not to. I mean, we don't believe in that. We're trying to create the product that we want to use ourselves, but also, I mean, I think user trust is something that it's just short-sighted. So yeah, on that, we will never sell your data unless we explicitly tell you. So, and we don't have any plans to do that.
All right. So next up, some much better news. This is probably the news that I'm most excited about that we've come through in a long time regarding, freedom of mobility and location travel. Southeast Asian nations. This is 10 members of sort of a geo-economic and political security alliance. So this is Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Vietnam, and Thailand. All places, a couple of these places that you and I have spent some significant time, they are looking to implement a single visa policy, very similar to what the EU does. And this would be awesome.
Man, that is great. That is always good news. And I think until I'm sure a lot of our listeners, that's a really exciting proposition. But for some of them that haven't done as much travel, I mean, it's just such a pain when, if you want to check out a country, even for a handful of days, having to go through different paperwork and wondering if it actually works. And, these third party websites that supposedly it's just it can be a hell of a lot. So, I mean, I think that's good on them. And I think they're going to see, I don't know, I think it's just a good strategy. And I think everyone wins there,
yes.
Considering the status quo.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this does, in fact, happen. This is certainly not a done deal, but it seems like it's under very serious consideration and could be in place as early as late this year or early 2018, starting with Thailand and Cambodia. So I think, this is definitely a possibility. We will keep an eye on it. If I see any new updates, we'll definitely report on this. But it could just save a lot of headache and extra time and paperwork and the visa on arrival crap and just super excited. I would love to see this go into effect.
I think beyond tourism, I think the region is, I think some exciting things are going to happen there in the next, 10 to 20 years. And this isn't because I'm some economist that understands everything, but I've heard some people talk on it, on which regions are on the uptick and which aren't. And in Southeast Asia, whether it's tourism or whether it's trade, it seems like they're taking some pretty big steps to kind of come together and become more unified, where kind of the rising tide mentality of together creating more, whether it's tourism, whether it's trade, less friction doing business across borders. So it's pretty interesting region.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, that's good news. And as far as bad news goes, it looks like American Airlines is going to give us a little bit less room in economy on certain flights. So it looks like on the Boeing 737 Max, so this is one of the newer 737s America's getting, they're going to shrink their seat pitch from 31 inches to 29 inches. So it is only 2 inches. That's the good news. It's not a big deal. However, when you got nothing to give, those 2 inches,
If your kneecaps are already broken, it's gonna hurt.
yeah,
quite a
normal
bit.
economy, I'm already screwed, in front of me and to the side. So this is just gonna make it that much less savory. But I mean, I guess the good news is it would be really expensive for them just to do this on all their planes. So I mean, maybe this is a trend. We'll see this moving forward because this is, it just would cost them too much money. They wouldn't. I don't think it would be a good investment. But it'll be interesting to see if other airlines follow suit and where this goes, because you got to stop eventually.
Yeah.
You can't shrink economy down to the point where you've got to be 5'7" or shorter to have it be manageable.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you wonder at some point the FAA is probably going to step in for safety reasons. I think that this is sort of on par with what the airlines like Spirit and Frontier are currently doing. Delta and United are 30 to 31 inches. Southwest and JetBlue are 31 to 33. So this is a significant difference. You're losing 4 inches from what JetBlue is offering in economy on at least most of their aircraft. So bummer to see that. But, it is also true that the 737 MAX they haven't taken delivery, I don't think, on any of those aircraft. So you got some time. This is not coming up right away, but definitely not a great thing. And I guess, I kind of encourage you to vote with your wallet. And if you've got a comparable airfare on another one of the carriers, maybe go someplace else and show them that that's not going to work.
Yeah, man. Speaking of, when are some designers just going to just create a better solution? I know that there's like really smart people trying to tackle these problems and making the airlines money, and also try to provide the customer with some legroom and stuff. But man, there's got to be a better way. I don't know the exact answer, but come on, they've got to be able to figure it out a little bit better than that.
I will say, man, I don't know that technology is going to be on our side, because the airlines are the ones that are, going to be buying these new innovations. And I think we mentioned for just a brief minute on a show a few weeks ago, I listened to Dots, Lines, and Destinations, which is Seth Miller, the Wandering Arameans podcast, and they were talking about the air show. I think it was in Europe somewhere that they just attended. It's like the aircraft interiors big expo show, and they were talking about these new rows that basically the seats were on sliders, and they could adjust the seat pitch up to in between flights. They could move whole sections up and back to increase the number of sort of premium economy or economy plus type seating with extra space, and potentially be able to cram people in the back. So I hear what you're saying for sure, and definitely have my fingers crossed that some of those innovations will bleed into creating more comfort for travelers. But I'm worried that it might just get easier to pinch people who aren't willing to pay extra.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're definitely moving in the wrong direction as far as having it be more comfortable in economy class. But God, I guess I can dream a little bit.
All right. Well, back to good news for a second. I thought this was kind of a cool story. A Southwest captain this week who has been tracking basically every single passenger that he's transported for 22 years flying with Southwest just took his 1 millionth passenger, and he decided to treat that person to a nice special treat. Gave them a bottle of champagne and an envelope with the cash. Somehow the pilot just went and figured out how much that person paid for their ticket, and just paid for out of his own pocket the ticket for that person. Gave him a cash envelope full of money. So I thought that was super cool, and just a great story, man.
If you're the CEO of Southwest Airlines, you just have to love that. I mean, that's just one of your people going above and beyond, and seems like he truly was taking it seriously to serve people and get people where they're going, whether it's business or leisure. So that's pretty cool, man. I think Southwest has a pretty positive company culture if you're going to compare them amongst the other carriers. I mean, even the flight attendants are given the safety spiel with some pep in their step, and it's probably their third flight of the day and they're tired and want to see their family. But I think generally they do a pretty good job of having good vibes, trying to make travel days suck a little bit less.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So last thing before we head over to core content and talk about charge cards versus credit cards, AJ and I talked a little bit about the Alaska Airlines card, the $30K offer, and a $0 companion fare for your first companion fare, which is a better deal. Usually it's a $99 companion ticket. And there's also a $100 statement credit that we did not mention last week. And it's because we didn't have any links for this. There was kind of like a long process where you had to make like a fake booking, like pretend like you were going to buy a ticket. And then the Alaska Airlines website was going to give you this different offer that was special. I couldn't get it to work. Well, anyways, we found a direct link that includes the $100 statement credit as well. So we're just going to post that in the show notes. If you're on the fence about applying for that card and maybe want to get to that, we've got a direct link that offers the $100 statement credit as well. So you'll find that in the show notes, which is going to be at abroaders.com/174.
Cool, man. You ready to get into charge cards versus credit cards? And like you said earlier, we do occasionally field questions about this. So I think this is going to be a pretty good episode to clear that up because charge cards and credit cards are different. So charge cards generally means no spending limit, kind of, and you must pay off the balance each month. And there may be some boundaries with spending. And another thing too that I actually wasn't all that aware of is the differences between the way they affect your credit.
Yeah, so charge cards are not going to have the same type of impact on your credit score. And that's because it doesn't have utilization in the same way because you don't have an available credit limit with a charge card. Now, like you mentioned, you kind of alluded to that there are sometimes, eventually they may stop you from being able to add new charges. So a couple of prominent examples. And by the way, Amex is really the only company that does charge cards. There are some others that exist, but as far as the major banks, Amex is the one that really has a solid sort of group of charge cards. So those would be things like the Premier Rewards Gold card, the Business Gold Rewards card, the Amex Platinum cards. Those are all charge cards. And so, like AJ said, you just don't have a fixed credit limit. And because of that, you're still going to have the payment history component. So that's important. With charge cards, you're still 35% of your credit score depends on paying your bills on time. So that's still going to be a factor. You need to pay that card off in full each month. And it also has an impact on the 15% of your score, which is your credit history, basically how long your accounts have been open, what's the average age of accounts. So those two things definitely still matter, but you're basically getting a pass on charge cards or on your credit utilization. And I think the key takeaway for me, at least, is if you do need to spend quite a bit of money and you don't have any credit cards that have a large enough credit limit where you could spend, say you're going to buy furniture or something for your house and you're looking at a, $5,000 or $6,000 expenditure. Well, if your credit limit is only $8,000 on that card, you're going to be, 75% of your credit limit potentially. And if you have a charge card, that can be a great way to utilize that freedom from being hit with the utilization penalty, essentially. So that's something to just sort of keep in mind. And the big caveat here is you need to be able to pay that balance off because charge cards will not let you run the balance and pay it off over a couple of months. You need to pay it in full. But if you've got the cash in the bank and you want to just generate some miles with that purchase, it's a great idea to use a charge card for those big ones that otherwise would take one of your regular credit cards up to a high percentage utilization and ding your credit score for a little while.
Yeah. So are there any best practices as far as managing the relationship with the bank? In this case, we're in the U.S., so probably American Express. If you are going to make a big purchase, do you want to ring them up and say, hey guys, going to put the card to work a little bit, going to be making a purchase of, 10, 15, whatever, however many $1,000, or, So
Amex is actually really good. At least until recently, they had a page on the website. I'm going to see if I can dig up the link for you guys so that it'll be in the show notes if I can find it, if it's still there. But they had a check my spending ability sort of widget for charge cards where you could put in, hey, I'd like to charge $10,000 to my Amex Platinum. Is that going to get approved? And they would tell you whether that charge was going to be a problem or not. So that was just a really valuable tool that saves you a phone call or a conversation through the chat. that would probably be my second choice or second option if I wanted to double check and wasn't able to use the widget feature, is just use the online chat to verify your spending ability. That'll save you from having to, go through the phone system and, put in your card number and all that crap. So that's a really good way of using the online banking system with Amex. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that Amex has a limit of 4 credit cards in your name at a time. And Amex has a lot of really good properties, so lots of people do bump up against this. Like I had at one time the SPG, both business and personal. Those are credit cards. I had the Amex Everyday card, Everyday Preferred. That's credit card as well, and a Delta card. And so at that point, with 4 credit cards, you are maxed out and you can't get any more credit cards. So Amex is really nice because they don't have a limit on the charge cards that you can have. So that's a really good thing to keep in mind, is just kind of knowing which cards are credit cards and which cards are charge cards can help you plan your applications. And then, like I said, there aren't really any other banks that have significant credit card products. We've talked about the application rules for Chase and Citi in the past, as far as, there are different rules about spacing of applications and so forth. So I'm not going to get into that today. But yeah, I thought this was interesting, and hopefully, if you guys have any questions, would love to hear back from you, about this topic or anything else we discussed on the show, and we'll get back to you on those questions in a future episode.
Yeah, absolutely, man. One final thing, and my guess is that with the charge card, you're going to need some established credit that's pretty good, when you consider the proposition from the bank, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the point with the limitations, where, they're not going to let somebody that makes $20,000 a year run $20,000 in expenses on their charge card. So I think it has a lot to do with the income you report on your application and your history with American Express, what other cards you have, what your behavior has been in the past as far as running balances on your credit cards. So, you can't really oversimplify. There's a lot of factors that go into it. But, generally, I think that most of the Amex charge card products are more or less in the same region. Credit above 650, you've got a chance, especially if you're willing to call the reconsideration and talk over the application with a lending representative. And anything over 700, you probably have a really good chance, unless you've just opened a huge number of cards recently, or have something nasty on your credit report that's concerning for Amex. But I don't find these especially more difficult compared to credit cards. And I guess it's just because they're aggregating the risk over, spreading it out across a lot of consumers. And they've got very smart people that are running the numbers. But yeah, charge cards can be a great tool, and definitely something to look into, especially if you've already got 4 credit cards through Amex and are looking at, another product because it has benefits that are attractive to you.
Cool, man. Good stuff. Well, everyone, if you want to check out the links in the show notes, abroaders.com/174. If you have a question, like Erik said, shoot us an email or feel free to comment right on the show notes page.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being with us.
Hey, Broaders, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback